come I can't see her? There we go. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here, and we'll call our meeting to order. Chief, if you will lead us in the flag salute.
Yes, Mayor Long. Ready, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Sienna.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Losi.
Here.
Councilmember Stanfield.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent.
Here.
Mayor Long.
Here. Thank you. So under our presentations, I believe that we are postponing the Community Service Award to Officer Stephen due to some family issues. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor Long, he couldn't be here tonight. There was a accident and he's caring for a family member tonight. So we'll look to do that the first part of December.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to our presentation from Zero Waste Humboldt. And Maggie Gaynor is here for this part.
Thank
Maggie,
you.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Thanks for having us. I'm checking to see if my colleague Kira, who is going to lead this, if she's on. If she's not, I'll move forward. I'm gonna share our slides right now. So give me 1 second to fumble a little bit.
There is coming on to the meeting right now.
Okay. Kira, you want to load the slides up in their share, in their screen?
I'm not sure that she's quite connected yet, Maggie.
Okay, so let me see if I can get you back. There we are. Okay, so I will go ahead and put we promise to be brief as soon as we get set up here. There we go. So I'm just shuffling a few things around, and now I can share the screen. All right, and I'll move it towards the middle so that everybody can see it. How are we doing? We okay now?
Yep.
All right, so thank you. It's been 10 years since Zero Waste Humboldt brought the Zero Waste movement to Humboldt County, and I think it's been almost 10 years since we first presented to your council. We like to update our local elected leaders and city governments periodically, and so this is a good time. And this also happens to be once a year we have a countywide Zero Waste Day, and that is today. So I really appreciate your interest in giving us this time. I'm going to start with just a little bit of a broad backdrop. There is a hierarchy, a recognized hierarchy that started in the 70s for planning, for investment, and to kind of gauge environmental impact. And in elementary school and college, I think we all learned it as the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. Pretty much the same hierarchy holds true today. We no longer start off with reduce, because we've learned that's confusing to people. And in fact, a lot of people use these 3 R's interchangeably, and there is a really critical hierarchy for them. And we learned from public health that waste prevention is much better understood. So Zero Waste Humboldt emphasizes the zero waste methodology emphasizes prevention first, at the point of purchase, upfront, proactive, all the different kinds of methods, strategies, daily life habits, things we do at the workplace to prevent. And then very closely associated with that is materials reuse. And then everything that we can, there are many, many different forms of reuse that some we take for granted because we just do it every day, and others are a little different. And then after you've done everything you can with those, the carbon footprint becomes greater, the expenses become greater, but it's important to then, after you've generated the waste, then you get into recycling and composting, and that's important. So several different kinds of, I'm going to just zero in tonight on reuse, just to give you a little bit more information about that. So on the left corner, top corner, you see deconstruction and used building materials. That's a really, it's becoming more and more understood and more popular, the value of used building materials, and how to take down a building bit by bit carefully and being able to use materials that are of value. And then on the right side is Darren Ferreira, third generation dairyman, who recently, earlier this year, invested in sanitizing equipment so that now you can buy milk, local milk locally, and in a returnable bottle. Years previous, it had to be milk from the Central California. And so we're excited about this because there are breweries that are considering it, wineries. Across the country, it's being referred to as the refillable revolution or return to returnables. Again, it is better for the environment, and it ends up being better economically if you return the bottle, it's sterilized and refilled, rather than you put it on the curb, it's transported to a sorting facility where then and then it's transported further away, and it's crushed, it's melted down, it's molded back into another bottle, and then it's refilled, and then it's transported back to Humboldt County. So this form of returnables is becoming popular again, very much the way it was when I was a kid, except there's some new, more modern practices that help it. So everything, the other photos here really just illustrate habits in shopping, and more of our local grocery stores provide opportunities for you to be able to reuse your own containers. And a personal choice of mine is I don't like to carry, I have very pretty glass containers in my kitchen, but I don't like to carry them around in the car. And so I just use an old yogurt container with a snap-on lid, and then I can buy just about everything. I don't need all the old cardboard boxes, plastic containers, plastic bags, a lot of that kind of packaging. I don't have it anymore. The little photo in the middle is nicer containers than the reused yogurt, but this is the new wave of shopping, and more people are doing this. And of course, the state law is that we really get rid of film plastics altogether in the flyaway thin takeout plastic bags. And so more and more people are getting accustomed to that habit of reusing bags. Another good example of reuse is our what we call our water bottle, or excuse me, our real refill, not landfill network of 10 water bottle refill stations around Humboldt County. They're in local governments and 2 high schools. Fortuna has one in a Park and Recs building. So we worked hard to raise money, and we awarded these water bottle refill stations to local governments. And the only thing that we asked is to stay in contact with us at least once a year, sometimes twice a year. Each one has a clicker, a counter. And so it's an excellent project to be able to monitor, to really see what kind of difference we're making. COVID, the past 2 years, kind of interfered with that kind of testing and record keeping, but the 2 years prior, a modest estimate from everybody, adding up all of the 10 water bottle refill stations counters was 50,000 single-use plastic water bottles were avoided from the waste we generated each year. So successful project, and what we've seen since is a lot of the local governments are adding on in their other buildings, and now there's a couple for everyone to use at the county airport. I just want to give you a real quick kind of fast forward, thinking that this might help with context. I'm an old timer in the solid waste, now called sustainable materials management field. And what I saw in the 1960s and 1970s, the first laws in California regarding, they were not the first. The first laws go back to the 40s, but in modern times, it had to do with litter, and recycling began to be offered as a better alternative to tossing it out the window in your car. It was motivated because of Californians' embarrassment and concerns that there was litter sprinkled all along Highway 101 and I-5, and the California's tourism industry became a powerful ally in getting these new laws. And in fact, agriculture, too many farmers were finding some of the early fast food containers in their cows' stomachs when they died. And so that really was the first wave of laws in recycling. And then it moved into the 1980s and 1990s, where there was really serious concerns about landfill space and landfill space shortages and not in my backyard syndrome. And really, where are we going to put it all? And so a lot of laws were generated about landfill siting, about how to open up a landfill, how to cap off and close a landfill leachate. That's what a lot of it was related to. And in recycling, more and more to begin to try to minimize what goes to the landfill. And then in the 2000s, really, it became Californians' concerns about the damage that's being done by global warming and plastic pollution. And so that's where we are now. A lot of, I know Merritt has been real involved in the local task force of local governments all working on moving this forward. SB 1383 and AB 1826, these were passed in around 2016. It took a little while for the regulations on how to implement, but they really involve changing habits and business operations about food waste prevention, edible food recovery, business-to-business support. This is one that we're interested in helping businesses with. Food waste to farm animals and food waste to compost, carbon farming, and digesters. And so this goes into effect January 1, 2022, and is being implemented gradually over time. I think we're on a good roll now in Humboldt County. These are laws that were signed off by the governor October 5th and go into effect January 1st. And again, so I think they will be a phased approach, but I want to just give you some ideas. AB 1881 is about accurately how to measure the plastic and what is actually recyclable, and prohibits plastic waste exports to other countries. We've been for too many years now pawning off our plastics in other countries in the name of being recycled, when in fact often that was not what was happening. And we have too many exposés from 60 Minutes and in the news field about photos of 6-year-olds with their families out picking through plastics in poorer countries. So there's a couple things there all related to plastics. AB 1201 updates the labeling for compostable products. AB 962 makes it easier. This is one of our favorites because the past 2 years we have been doing research with HSU faculty and local beverage makers to create reusable glass bottle systems to reduce the need for single-use beverage containers, just as I was giving the example of the local dairy a moment ago. AB 1276 to reduce plastic foodware waste by giving takeout customers single-use foodware only when requested. It's very much the way we do with our fairs and festivals and rodeos, you know, when the vendors, we don't dole it out now. It's when somebody asks for it, then they're given it. And the last one is really important. For too many years, SB 343, too many years, the manufacturers, the largest Dow Chemical, the largest of the petrochemical industry that is making the single-use plastic packaging, single-use plastic doodads in our lives, they have been really using misleading labeling. And in fact, in 2013, several state attorney generals and the Federal Trade Commission said they were not allowed to use the chasing arrows. We've emphasized it with this law in California. People who really want to do a good job of recycling are being tricked. And I'm in the habit now of telling people, don't read what's on the container, you know, do what your contract hauler collector tells you is recyclable. And this is my last slide. We just want, again, thank you. If you're ever interested in any issues within waste reduction, if your city would like to, we're a small organization with limited resources, so we go to where we're invited. And we've worked with local Fortuna High School, a little bit with Fortuna businesses. If you'd ever like to do some form of zero waste planning, we're happy to assist. Any questions for me?
Does anyone from the council have any questions for Maggie?
Well, thank you.
I do have a comment that we actually have 2 water stations now, one at Newburgh Park by the softball diamond and behind the restroom facility, and the other on the Conroy Field in Roner Park for the Little League facility.
Aha. Great, great. Thanks, folks. I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you, ladies. Have a good evening.
You too.
All right, our next items are oral comments from the public. So there should be a number on your screen that you can call, or if you are on our call, you can raise your hand and Sienna will help me look for people. And while we're waiting for anyone to call in, we will go ahead and go to our consent calendar. We have 11 items, including the city council minutes, and then all of our monthly reports from administrative, community development, finance, parks and rec, police department, public works, River Lodge, and then our report of disbursements, authorization of destruction of selected Fortuna Police Department records, supplemental budget request to use American Rescue Plan Acts to upgrade the audio video equipment in the council chambers. And that's it. Does anyone wish to pull anything? Not seeing anybody, so we can entertain a motion.
Move to approve the consent calendar.
Sure.
Tammy, are you seconding?
Oh, yeah, I guess I can second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Sienna?
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Losi,
Yes.
Councilmember Stanfield,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent,
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes. Did we have anyone call in for public comment? I don't see
There
any.
are no additional participants at this time.
We will close public comment and move on to our city council business. Our first item is our second reading to amend Title 17 zoning regulations of the Fortuna Municipal Code, deleting section 17.06.183, second residential dwellings, and adding 17.06.001.5 accessory dwelling units. ordinance 2021-749.
Thanks, Mayor Long. Liz Shorey will be presenting this item, and I see that we also have Rob Homeland who helped in the creation and development of the new ordinance. So Rob's there. So that'll hand it over to Liz.
Yeah, thank you, Merritt and Honorable Mayor and council members. So yeah, this is a second reading. It's continued from the November 1st reading that you had. And so we did give a detailed PowerPoint presentation and answered questions. I'm going to go over this pretty quickly and then give you a chance to ask any additional questions that you might have. So we went over the history of the state ADU mandate and how the state removed much of the local control and establishing ministerial ADU standards. And so what we presented at the last meeting is an ordinance that complies with the state standards and also establishes development and design standards. And the purpose, what we focused on was protecting neighbors from potentially significant changes to their neighborhood and creating privacy and design compatibility. So the city code basically is looking to mitigate, creating mitigating standards. So for example, the state law requires ADUs to be approved ministerially with just a building permit, allowed in any residential zoning district. It establishes the minimum sizes for attached and detached ADUs, reduces setbacks to 4 feet, and requires at least a maximum or a minimum of 16 feet for detached ADUs, among other standards. And so what the city code responds with is design standards that include a maximum height of 16 feet for a detached ADU, which may be increased with a CUP, maximum height of the primary residence for an attached ADU, entrances oriented to the front or interior of the parcel lines unless the accessory dwelling unit is directly accessible from an alley or a public street. Other privacy protections include if it's within 8 feet of a property line and has windows on that side, it must have a 6-foot solid fence on the property line or clerestory or translucent windows. Obviously that's to protect the neighbors from, the impact of having neighbors that close to their residence. Second story decks and balconies, again, so with the minimum 10-foot setback from the adjoining lot. So increasing that setback from 4 feet to 10 feet if there's an overhanging or imposing balcony. And then building material design standards. So to, just kind of maintain the residential look of the new ADU. So it's visually and, aesthetically compatible with the neighborhood. So, through these standards, we're responding to the state's mandates just by creating some privacy and compatibility where we can. And that's really the purpose of the city's additional standards. And again, these can be modified with issuance of a conditional use permit, so things can be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. And yeah, if you have any questions, really that's it. I just wanted to give a quick, refresher over what we discussed and what's in your packet. If you have any additional questions, we've got Plan West here, Rob Homeland, and Vanessa Blodgett, and I can help you with any additional questions. So with that, staff recommends that you hold the second reading of the attached ordinance. So I'll hand that back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Does anyone from the council have any questions? We'll open it up to the public. Does anyone from the public? Jeremy, you've got your hands up. Just 1 second. So while Jeremy is asking questions, if anyone else has questions, please raise your hand or call the number on your screen. Jeremy.
I'm curious to know, on page 4 at the top under a detached ADU, 16 feet with ministerial approval as far as the height of a detached accessory dwelling unit. And then in the comments, it says that this would disallow ADUs that go over garages. So I wonder if there's another standard that we could adopt for a height greater than 16 feet. Because if you have an 8-foot ceiling on a residence and an 8-foot ceiling on a garage, you're always going to exceed that maximum. And then it doesn't go ministerial, it has to go through the planning commission, which we're trying to avoid for ease of use, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think what we tried to do is to be consistent with the city's existing accessory dwelling unit standard, which is 15 feet for a detached structure. So right now, anything over 15 feet, garage, a shop, would require a use permit. So, for a detached ADU, 16 feet is the height limit, but if they wanted to put it on top of a garage, then it would really be acting kind of like the existing code for a detached accessory structure. So it would be treated really the same. Single story would be allowed, 2-story on top of a garage, or 2-story or on top of a garage would require that permit. And it's more of an impact, on smaller lots, like in the 6,000 square foot zones where they're going to be closer to the property line, and have more of a visual impact on the neighboring residences on the larger lot parcels. And that's true with the big shops that people build nowadays. With the larger lots, like half acre and acre, we do when we process those, in a large lot, they're going to be like 20 or 30 feet from the property line sometimes, and there's really virtually no impact. But on the smaller lots, that's where, it's a little bit more oversight. So it's really the same process that we have now, but yeah, that's really open for your discussion.
So I'm not really in favor of that because it puts it through the planning commission, which is kind of counterproductive to the, in my opinion, the ministerial advantages to just doing it that way. So I would like to see at least 20 feet, but I see the
Councilmember-
city manager unsilenced. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
If I may, I'll just throw something out there. This might be useful and may not be. So at 16 feet, you could theoretically do a story and a half. So we're talking about detached garages. And so the structure is already built. And so if it's built in such a way that it can be modified and installed inside of above the garage without doing a substantial change to the structure, then it would fit. If you have to do a really substantial change to the structure, it could be that it's only 4 feet away from the neighbor's property. And so the intent here, and if you would like to go a different direction, obviously that's council's decision. Just wanted you to help understand the intent behind it. If you're going to make that substantial of a change to a detached structure that's close to your neighbor's property, then it goes before the planning commission so that they can have some required conditions of approval so that you're not lording over your neighbor's property. So we tried to strike a balance between making this easy and making sure that it doesn't grossly impact neighbors. But as you're suggesting, this can be changed so that that's a different number or just a different process entirely.
Okay.
So what that does for me is once you have to go for a conditional use permit, the neighbors get notified instead of just showing up one morning and there's this massive building really close to their property line and they didn't have any input. So I kind of like the fact that if we're going to put it 4 feet from someone's property line, they get to have a say and maybe point out some things that staff doesn't realize or the city doesn't realize is going to impact their property. So I get that it's extra meetings, but that's my reasoning for it.
Okay.
I was going to say the same thing because I live on one of those small lots. And if I had a neighbor on both sides build a large ADU, I could end up in a shadow canyon with no sunlight in the backyard and no view of the sky. And I would be highly against that.
Fair enough. I'm glad we're talking about it so we can help each other's perspective.
Yeah, like that on bigger lots, it's not that much of a problem because the setbacks are already further and the neighbors are spread out a lot further, but those 6,000 square foot lots, they're pretty small. So anyone else have questions or comments?
I've got a bunch more, sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Jeremy.
Page
Go ahead.
12, paragraph 11 -B. I'm not sure what impact fees for the development of an accessory dwelling unit less than 750 square feet. So is this saying that if it's 800 square feet as a maximum, if you build it slightly under that, there'll be no impact fees charged to the person developing?
I believe the 750 is the state law,
Okay,
and then the for impact fees. So we're just picking up the state law on those. But yes,
okay,
that is what would happen.
all
So
right.
Liz, want to tell us what impact fees are, just for anyone who's listening?
So those would be the water and sewer capital connection fees, traffic impact fee, and stormwater fee.
All the things that were paid at the initial permit for the existing dwelling.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, on page 13, under paragraph F, -2, I believe item A, it should say 1,200 square feet there instead of a maximum floor area of 800 on the detached.
This is what I brought up last time and it's so confusing.
I think that's right, Vanessa and Rob, is that right? So detached accessory dwelling unit maximum 800 square feet?
I'm looking right now. If you want to come back to that question.
Okay. Another part of this detail talked about the accessory dwelling unit would not be in front of the primary unit, or it would be equal to the frontage of the primary unit. But I wonder if that would apply to a garage conversion if the garage was in front.
So just to clarify your question, we're talking about a detached garage. It's a separate structure from the primary house. And that detached garage is within, right? So the way that's phrased is that you can't build an ADU within the required front yard setback. So if that zone district says that your house can be no closer than 10 feet to the sidewalk, the back of the sidewalk, that's your required front yard setback. What you're reading says that you cannot build the ADU in the required front yard setback, which I think is a good requirement. But you're saying, what if the garage is already there?
Mhm.
And I want to put an ADU above it. Is that your question?
Above it or converting it to an ADU?
That's a great question. I believe there's something written in there about modifying pre-existing buildings, but I'm not entirely sure. So I've got 2 questions to research if you have other ones.
I have another one on page 15. Paragraph 4B1. Oh, that's this. I already talked about that. Sorry. It came up again, so I wrote it down again. And page 17, paragraph 1A. Could this say instead of an accessory dwelling unit shall not be rented for any period less than 30 days at a time? Could it say without additional licensing? Because that would eliminate a VRBO or a Airbnb potential. And we don't have an ordinance that discusses that yet.
That's directly out of state law. So the state says that that's just, directly out of state law. So that can't be modified. You could make it stricter, but you can't make it looser. So the state's intention there is that ADUs are not constructed so that they become vacation rentals. So you can't make it less than a month. You could make it more than a month. Does that answer your question?
That totally answers my question. Thank you. But I'm curious to understand how VRBOs exist then.
They just don't exist in EDUs in the state anymore. So they
Okay,
can exist in a house but they can't exist in an ADU.
Because the state's push is all about housing and extra housing and getting more housing built. And so they're not considering vacation rentals as providing housing.
So I think Councilmember Stanfield's question is a really smart one. So the state is saying you can't have vacation rentals in an EDU, but you can take up a whole parcel of a single family residence. It's a little silly, but it's just the way the state law is written.
okay,
And Councilman Stanfield, we will be bringing an amendment to the city's short-term rental ordinance to correct that, to make that adjustment.
oh, okay.
And
I
Vanessa, do you
figured
have,
one would apply or the other, but not both.
Vanessa, have you been able to help us find answers to the other two items?
I think,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I did find for the first question that had to do with the 800 square foot versus 1200 square foot. So that was, and it is a little confusing. So that's in the section that's for ones that have limited standards. So if it's 800 square feet or under, it's purely a building permit and there's no other review. If it's between 800 and 1200 square foot, then there is the additional kind of like ADU permit and the other design standards apply also.
That doesn't really make it very user-friendly or understandable. Is there a better way to explain that? Because
So there's a table. The table in, let me find that. It is on page 10.
Page 10.
I had those exact same questions last time, Jeremy, and they explained them somewhat, but to me, it's still very confusing for someone who wants to look at this ordinance and figure out what they can build.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if our handout is any more clear to the layperson, and that would be my concern.
I think the handout was better than the ordinance.
Okay. So table 10, can you kind of walk me through it? Detached up to 800 square foot on single family lots. But then where does it say the 1200 square feet?
So under is greater than 800 square feet and or 16 feet in height, then you have to meet the general requirements. You look at the development standards and the objective design standards.
Where's that? What
It's kind
page number?
here. And Jeremy, if you look at the handout that the city of Fortuna did, I understood it better after I looked at the handout. On page, I don't know what page.
It's a separate attachment. On the
Yeah.
handout report. And I think Councilmember Stanfield, I think it just clarifies that the design standards for an ADU come into play when it's over 800 feet. And you still get a building permit in an ADU permit, but it's not just simply a building permit, if that makes sense.
So is it ministerially approved?
Yeah, there's no conditional use permit required. It just, you have to comply with those design standards. And then if you don't comply with the design standards identified in the ordinance, then it would kick it up to a conditional use permit.
You really
I
have
think
to
the point
start,
is to avoid those discretionary choices by the state law. So this would establish the design standards that we went over last time and are in the ordinance, really to kind of protect aesthetics and other, neighborhood concerns that could happen. If you wanted to, we could go through those. But that's a big part of this ordinance.
and it's really table 1 that directs you to, determining what type of an ADU you have, and then which set of standards, E, G, or H.
Right, okay.
When you look at the handout, it has that spelled out a little bit more. And the ADU permit, that means going to the planning commission, correct?
No, that's still ministerial.
ADU permits really just filing paperwork to make it easier for the city staff to crunch all the numbers. Because part of this is a numbers game at this point where the state's saying it has to be 50% or 850 square feet. There's a lot of numbers. So I think it's really just so that Liz has all the numbers in front of her and she can say, yes, your unit is this size and you're proposing this size. And so, yes, it's all ministerial. It's like a confirmation report.
So the use,
Hand out that summary doesn't tell them when they need to go to the planning commission, get a conditional use permit.
yeah, that is in the text of the ordinance. So to deviate beyond even those basic standards, to get an exception to the design standards. So the ADU permit is really basically the design standards. And then to deviate from those is where the use permit would be triggered. And that's in the text of the ordinance.
So to me, that would make more sense if we added that to this handbook now, because
It's,
that ordinance is long, the ordinance is confusing, and
Oh, it's actually at the bottom of table 1. It's in a note, a footnote, and it may be elsewhere.
it's also in the handout under height, and it said 16 feet
Yeah.
ministerial approval and the maximum height of the zoning district with a use permit.
so in the table above this one, there's another.
It says if it deviates, footnote 1 says if it deviates from the objective ADU permit standards, then it requires a use permit.
But wouldn't it be easier to show it on our little chart and to put a little tiny footnote and little tiny writing that no one's going to understand?
We can
Okay.
we'll certainly update the handout, for readability, and I think we will over time. Again, this, when this came up last time, we talked about, it's somewhat of a learning process, and we're going to look for those areas where people might get tripped up, but we can look at it, this handout, and try to clarify and maybe say more specifically, rather than in a footnote, over 16 feet requires a conditional use permit, and add it to that. Add the footnote to the column, perhaps, but I think that's something we could play with outside the ordinance. I think the intent is clear in the ordinance.
And this might be something that you want confirmation from your city attorney, but my time at the city of Eureka, I do recall getting approval from the city attorney and finding case law that allowed for changes to the ordinance as long as it didn't change the content, just to add clarity. So if it's adding a footnote that's already elsewhere in the ordinance, staff could theoretically change this ordinance to add that kind of clarity as long as it's not changing the ordinance itself. I also have an answer to Councilmember Stanfield's additional question.
Okay, go ahead.
So the question was about front yard setbacks and if an existing structure is already in the front yard setback. So looking at page 11, item E6, there's a section about converting and replacing existing structures. And B says if an existing structure is demolished and replaced, then the ADU can be constructed in the same location and to the same dimensions as the demolished structure. It doesn't really address converting existing structures, and so a sentence could be added there. So that, this may be a failing of that particular item 6B. It doesn't really talk about converting. It's only 6A that talks about conversion, which is an internal ADU in that case. So then worst case scenario, depending on how staff interpreted this, it would become a conditional use permit to do what you're proposing, because that flexibility is built in here where if it's not explicitly allowed, then it can be allowed through a conditional use permit approval by the Planning Commission. So options are to leave it as is, and staff interprets this as conversion, the same as demolishment and replacement, or it becomes a conditional use permit.
I think staff's interpretation too would be that if it's an existing structure within the intention of this ordinance, that we wouldn't require a conditional use permit.
How are you with that, Jeremy?
I'm good with it. Thank you very much for pointing that one out. I missed it.
Okay, so I'll call on anyone else in this minute. So I'm thinking that I'm good with the ordinance, but I want our handout to change a little bit to work on that. Anyone else from the council have any comments or questions? I am seeing no one. Let me see if anyone has a hand up. I see no hands up. Does anyone from the public wish to comment on this item? There's a number on your screen. I think I said that already, and we haven't gotten any callers, correct, Sienna? Okay. All right, so we will close public comment and we need a motion.
I'd make a motion to hold the second reading, adopt ordinance 2021-749 and read by title only.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second, Sienna.
Ordinance 2021-749, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fortuna, amending Title 17 zoning regulations of the Fortuna Municipal Code, deleting section 17.06.183, second residential dwellings, and adding 17.06.001.5 accessory dwelling units. Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Losi,
Yes.
Councilmember Stanfield,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent,
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes, and so can we get that handout revised and brought to a future council meeting, like before the end of the year, maybe? Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, got all these crazy things on our agenda tonight. So our next one is to adopt the City of Fortuna Local Road Safety Plan, Resolution 2021-39.
Brendan Bird will be leading the staff report, and then he also has a presentation from our consultants with GHD.
Thank you, Merritt. Honorable Mayor and City Council, it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I'm here to recommend that the council consider adopting the City of Fortuna's Local Road Safety Plan. So here on the meeting tonight, as Merritt mentioned, we have Kathy Kleinschmidt with GHD. She was one of our leading engineering consultants that helped lead the development of the plan for the city. However, before I turn it over to her for a brief presentation, I'd like to say a few quick words kind of on how this plan came to be and why. So an important outside funding source that the City of Fortuna has used in the past couple of years has been the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which is otherwise known as HSIP. So in recent years, the city has used HSIP dollars to complete portions of the Ronerville Road project in 2016 and the pedestrian crossing improvements and striping that happened just last year. A recent change has been made to this program so that future eligibility is going to require that local agencies will have to develop and adopt local road safety plans to remain eligible in all future cycles of HSIP funding. So on the heels of the federal highways making that determination, Caltrans allocated funding, grant funding for local agencies, and the City of Fortuna immediately applied for and received a grant to develop our plan back in early 2020. So the plan development is now coming near its culmination with this presentation here tonight. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kathy with GHD, who will talk about the plan development process and some of the findings. So with that, take it away, Kathy.
Thank you, Brendan. Can everybody hear me? Yes,
Can.
okay. Thank you for the ability to present to you tonight, City of Fortuna's Local Road Safety Plan. I'm going to share my screen and see if you can. Okay, can everybody see now too?
Yes.
Okay. Honorable Mayor and council members, I'm going to be presenting the local road safety plan. First, I'm going to go over the agenda. We're going to go over the overall background of the local road safety plan process. Our safety partners, we developed a stakeholder working group that helped with the development of the plan, as well as we looked in the collision analysis past 5 years. This is a data-driven plan, and it's going to feed directly into HSIP funding, as Brendan mentioned, as well as we also did public outreach, and then we have recommendations I'm going to hit on at the end of this presentation. As Brendan mentioned, the funding is coming from the federal government and it goes down to the state, and it requires the state have the California Strategic Highway Safety Plan that they have to adopt and on a 5-year cycle. And now Caltrans is also requiring every agency to have their own local road safety plan. It kind of complements the state strategic highway plan. And it's necessary for next HSIP cycle, which will actually be this year. And in the next couple of months, they'll be announcing it. So it was important to get this plan underway and developed. As Brendan mentioned, the city has been very successful in winning previous HSIP funding. They've won a lot of different pedestrian crossing enhancements, where you've seen them probably throughout the city on Main and Ronerville, where you've got those rectangular rapid flashing beacons, as well as some center line and edge line striping, as well as the Ronerville Road project that was also STIP and HSIP funding, and that did a lot of improvements along that corridor, completed in 2016. The city has also been very successful in winning safe routes to school grants and funding different improvements around the elementary schools, as well as a middle school there. And other funding sources like active transportation program. I'm hearing the next cycle, they're actually placing emphasis on one of the scoring criteria they're going to add is for projects that are identified in adopted plans. So it's really important to have safety projects identified in, as many plans as you can get. The local road safety plan is required for HSIP, but on ATP, it would also be a nice thing to mention bike and ped projects for that, as well as if you have a bicycle and pedestrian master plan. So the city did receive a grant for this plan. It is a data-driven process that's complementing the state strategic highway plan, which is to reduce fatal and serious injury collisions on the public roads. Of course, with this plan, we want to cater it to your agency's needs. So we're looking at collaborating with a group that's not only focused on engineering, but as well as emergency response, education, enforcement, and the emerging technologies. These are the 5 traffic safety E's that are identified in the state plan. So I'll get into our engineering countermeasures as well as the other safety E's we looked at countermeasures. The overall process, this is FHWA's Federal Highway Administration's process. We followed this process. We established our stakeholder working group, our leadership. We looked at the past 5 years of safety data. We determined emphasis areas and strategies to mitigate some of the safety concerns, as well as how do you prioritize and incorporate those strategies, and then evaluating and updating the plan. So in the beginning, the city obviously works with these folks day in, day out, boots on the ground type people we want to have involved in the plan development. These safety partners were identified with, kind of going over all the different stakeholders that are important to include in the plan development, people from the city, as well as, your jurisdictional roadway partners, Caltrans District 1. We also included Humboldt County, as well as your police department, your fire department, your school district, Fortuna Union High School District, the high school, as well as your elementary school district. They were all stakeholders during the development of this plan. Humboldt Transit Authority, Redwood Community Action Agency, as well as your city ambulance. So throughout the plan development, we did have 2 meetings, as well as they could provide comments on the draft before we went to present it to you. We had 2 meetings. The first meeting was in December 2020, last year, and we looked at all the collision data. We talked about the process of conducting a local road safety plan, as well as we discussed the different emphasis areas based on collision data, just needs of the city. And we focused the plan on pedestrians, bicyclists, distracted driving, intersections, as well as aggressive driving and speeding management. The second meeting, we reviewed all the public comments. We did have a website that was live, and I'll get into that next, that we got a lot of good comments from. So we discussed that with the working group and ways to look at their safety concerns, because sometimes some of the safety issues don't necessarily have a collision, existing collision issues. So we looked at those concerns, as well as we looked at different safety countermeasures and projects that we could recommend in this plan. as well as we refined the guiding principles, the vision, the mission statement, and the goals. So in developing the vision, the mission statement, and the goals, the stakeholder working group discussed what we're trying to achieve, as well as how we're going to get there. I'll just read the vision. The City of Fortuna will partner with various community stakeholders to provide a safe and sustainable multimodal transportation system for all users of the public roadway in Fortuna. And the mission statement's pretty much how we're going to get there, and developing a comprehensive safety plan with stakeholders and citizens, as well as our goals are complementing some of the collision data we noticed with your rear end collisions, as well as speeding and improper turning, as well as the goals they wanted to achieve with this plan in improving multimodal infrastructure around schools, reducing fatal and severe injury collisions, and just making it a more livable, walkable community. Just want to hit on some of the collision analysis. Past 5 years. So when we started this, we didn't have 2020 data complete, and with COVID, it's kind of an anomaly. So we looked at this past 5 years. There was 436 collisions for the City of Fortuna's jurisdiction on those roadways, and the majority are at intersections, 264 with 172 at your segments. This is a collision density heat map. This kind of shows you where your collisions are occurring in the city. Main Street in your downtown had a hot spot between 9th and 12th Street, as well as Ronerville Road had some various hot spots. This one here has recently been mitigated with the installation of the all-way stop at Newburgh and Ronerville. And then down Fortuna, Newburgh and Fortuna had a hot spot, Newburgh and 12th Street, as well as down here by the Redwood Way on Fortuna, and then here at the Kenmar and Fortuna Boulevard, Ross Hill Road intersection, and then down here on School Street. And looking at your collision severity and collision type, the city did not have any fatal collisions in the past 5 years, but you had 6 severe injury collisions. The majority of collisions were property damage only. On your collision types, the majority are rear end, and sideswipe was the second at 96, followed by hit object. I'm going to also get into your vehicle to pedestrian collisions and your bicycle collisions. First, I just wanted to hit on where the severe injury collisions were located. 3 occurred in 2018, and 2 were, so in 2018, you had 3 collisions, all on Ronerville on different locations. And then 2 of the severe injury collisions were vehicle to pedestrian collisions. One was at Oak and 7th, one was on Ronerville. And then you also had 2 due to a broadside not yielding to the right-of-way at an intersection. As I mentioned, 2 of them were vehicle to pedestrian collisions. One was over here off Oak and 8th Street, as well as Kenmar Road. And those were occurring in the shoulder or crossing not in the crosswalk. But the majority of pedestrian to vehicle collisions were already at crosswalks at the intersection. So it's good that you focus on your existing crosswalks at intersections, because we're noticing that's where a concentration of your pedestrian collisions are. As well as your bicycle collisions. You can see them kind of concentrated on Fortuna Boulevard. It's a popular biking route, Ronerville, where it kind of goes to Maine, as well as kind of by the schools. There wasn't any severe injury, but there was some injury collisions. And the way that bicycles are coded, they're very similar to vehicle types, and many were other. So we're not exactly sure what was the cause. So the website was live for several months. You might have heard about it through, they posted the website link on the city website, social media outlets, as well as it also made it on TV. we got a lot of good comments, 84 interactive map comments. That's where everybody has the ability to drag, if there's a pedestrian cross comment, to a location within the city, a biking comment, a driving comment. People can read the comments. They can even put pictures or like someone else's comments. And we also had a survey, and we got 29 survey responses. From the survey, the public identified roadway issues, the main issue was the city's intersections. And then the lack of infrastructure was second, the need for more continuous bike lanes, sidewalks, turn lanes. This was top locations through the interactive map. 12th Street in Newburgh was one, Kenmar and Fortuna. These were areas where we already had our hotspots. Downtown Fortuna along Main, that's another one we had already identified. Ross Hill Road and School, Newburgh and Fortuna. Actually, that was a positive one. They liked the recent upgrades from the Safe Routes to School project. And we also heard about speeding and congestion on Ronerville. So when we go through the project selection, since this is a data-driven plan and it has to feed into HSIP eligibility, you really have to look at how it addresses strategic highway safety plan priority. They have different countermeasures and crash reduction factors that we look at because we want to make it a competitive project. There's typically benefit to cost ratios with HSIP. So we looked at how we can identify priority locations through the collision analysis, as well as how we can apply some countermeasures to other roadways that have similar high risk characteristics in a systemic way. We looked at the public comments, and then we coordinated with the city, coordinated with Brendan. He had lots of good input. And we came up also, we also looked at the current city projects. Since we're looking at past 5 years, you have to also look at what areas might have already been mitigated with safety projects or projects that are planned and coming up. These are just some of the recommendations I'm going to go over. So the city already implemented some of these countermeasures. I just want to highlight that as one of the countermeasures, the retro-reflective borders on the signals backplates. You've probably noticed those within your city. Another one we are suggesting is improve the signal timing as well as upgrade your signals. Some of the signal indications are 8-inch versus 12-inch, as well as pedestrian countdown signals. Put those at those intersections mentioned here, as well as your push buttons. They have accessible push buttons now too. And these are all fundable through HSIP, as well as converting certain intersections to roundabout. That is also a safety countermeasure. The city is already in the planning of the Kenmar and US 101 interchange for roundabout. I believe Newburgh and 12th has also been identified for a future roundabout. And then we're also suggesting at Fortuna and Kenmar and Riverwalk. So those are areas for improving the intersection control, as well as pedestrian crossing enhancements, Fortuna and Newburgh and Ronerville and Newburgh. And then these evaluate the intersection for conversions to all-way stop. That would have to be done through an engineering study. But if it's warranted through an engineering study, then that could be a countermeasure through HSIP. And then other countermeasures recommended in the plan are bike lanes on Fortuna Boulevard in Newburgh, segment lighting on Fortuna, Main Street and Smith Lane, as well as refreshing or installing edge line and center lines, Ronerville, Riverwalk, Smith and Newburgh. So as I mentioned with this plan, we not only wanted to look at engineering as a countermeasure, we also wanted to include other safety E's, and we worked with your police department and as well as your fire department, and we wanted to put some of those things into the plan. So targeted speed enforcement, where you have areas of speeding or areas of concern, as well as speed feedback signs, or they can put on the side of the road those radar signs that can tell you how fast you're going. And some of this stuff can be funded, additional officer enforcement and stuff can be funded through Office of Traffic Safety grants, as well as distracted driving type campaigns. And then for your emergency response, the signal at Newburgh and Fortuna is right by your fire stations. So giving them preemption where that allows them to have control of that traffic signal to flush out the traffic, especially for that southbound approach. That would be a nice thing that can be applied for with this plan, as well as just make sure that access is always maintained with future developments. We did look at a lot of education priorities and things we can include with the plan. Different pedestrian safety campaigns about the do's and don'ts of crossing, bright clothing and carry a light at night. You could bicycle education and resources, those bicycle rodeos at schools and different stuff like that. As well as the one thing that came up with working with the school districts is they really do need bike parking near the high schools and middle schools, and that can help with encouraging more people to take their bikes to school, less traffic. And then with the agencies we are working with the development of the plan, they said, we could always kind of complement each other with some of these safety resources and work together. So there could be a countywide, collaboration with the Safe Routes to School Task Force, as well as you can work with other agencies and Redwood Community Action Agency, Humboldt County, and Humboldt County Association of Governments. And then just hitting on some emerging technologies. There's, always the ITS infrastructure, how the signals communicate back to the city, as well as smart cities practices, improving your technology with some of these grant funding abilities. Also, bicycle detection is a nice feature to have at signals. That's usually through video detection. And then just getting more changeable message signs. If you have special events, you can have those changeable message signs for the events or the traffic changes. And where we are today is we've got a final draft report that presenting to you for adoption. It is going to be a living document to be updated as needed to reflect the changes. It typically needs a formal update every 5 years that kind of coincides with the state's strategic highways safety plan. But there's goals that are identified in the plan, and those can be tracked through the process as well. And thank you so much for your time today. And I would like to open it up for questions.
All right, we'll open public comment in case anyone wants to call the number on your screen, or anyone that is on our meeting can raise their hand, and we will go to the council. Mike Losi has his hand up first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First off, I'd just like to say that congratulations to GHD and Kathy. The local road safety plan, the draft report is excellent, I think. I mean, it's professionally done. I like the color photos. It's very comprehensive. So you guys are to be congratulated for just an excellent report. I think really any future plans, as you mentioned, that the plan needs to be updated every 5 years. One of the areas, can you see me?
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, it went kind of haywire there. I'm not sure why, but one of the areas that I see as an issue is Newburgh Road, east of Fortuna Boulevard, right in front of Walker Elementary School. If anybody's tried to go through Newburgh Park to either get onto Runnerville Road or coming the other direction from Runnerville to Fortuna Boulevard, there's probably 3 times that school lets out and traffic backs up onto Fortuna Boulevard. So I do understand that it would be a good idea as far as the emergency vehicle preemption for any traffic on Fortuna Boulevard. But if that emergency traffic has to turn on Newburgh Road and go past the school or even into the school, they are going to have a very difficult time getting anywhere around the school. at least 3 different periods during the day. So I think that that needs to be an area to look at for future reference.
Thank you, Mike. Mike Johnson?
Yeah, I would just like to ask about in the report, which I agree is excellent. It covers a lot of territory, has some recommendations, and it fills a need. I like the idea of being prepared before a grant opportunity comes through, that we are ready to move on it. But in one space under field reconnaissance, it says that 8-inch traffic signal heads need to be replaced. And in the MUTCD, when it talks about sizing and such as that, it says that 8-inch heads in existing use can continue until they've run their existing life. And actually, if the intersection at 12th and Main were built today because of the speed limit there and the distance from the limit line to the traffic signal head is less than 125 feet, you could build it with 8-inch heads. So I do feel that we could still change them to 12s, but the use of the word need could be changed to should or can or may, because it sounds like an imperative, and that may cause a problem someplace down the line.
Thank you,
agree.
Mike. Anyone else from the council have questions? Jeremy?
I was wondering if the stakeholders who met are going to meet again and prioritize the list on page 5 of the report. I think that would, or maybe just our city staff is going to do that. I'm not sure, but seems to me like those are all great ideas, but there should be a priority list set to those. I wonder if Brendan or Merritt or both are planning to do that.
Yeah, I can speak to that, Jeremy. So we, ultimately what we tried to do, some of the methodology of the report kind of results in its own prioritization because of the formula of everything. And that just kind of is what it is when you go through the process approach. I think ultimately, as we really truly look at priorities for implementing these projects, what we'll really look to try to do is match opportunities with funding opportunities as we can find them. We did and we will continue to use our local stakeholders as an additional means to really identify community priorities. And, we'll do that in future development of these plans in the future as well. But I would say that it's kind of, it's certainly going to be a living process, and we're going to be continually evaluating what our priorities are based on the needs of the community and the opportunities that we have in front of us. So.
Okay. One other comment, and I don't know, I'm not trying to be nitpicky, but if this is a document that we're supposed to like adopt or accept, in the report, it talked about an incident on the corner of Oak and 7th, and Fortuna doesn't have an Oak Street. It might be O Street.
This is kind of an interesting one, and we scratched our head on this a little bit too. There is actually a small little section of street over off of Main called Oak Street. It was news to me too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's right near those metal buildings that John Egan built a few years back.
Oak.
If you know where those.
Yes, it's kind of by where Leonardo Logging was up off of Main there.
Yeah.
Kind of in and around the Chevron station. Yeah.
Doesn't even show it up on Parcel Quest. Okay.
Any questions from council? I don't see any hands raised from people who are on our meeting. Sienna, anyone call in?
No, but Mike Johnson did notify me that he's lost his internet. So he's not on the meeting longer.
He just disappeared on us. So do we want to have the 8-inch to 12-inch traffic lights, that sentence that said need to be changed? Is that something that we want to address before the report is finalized?
I think we should, yeah,
Mike
when the
Johnson?
council adopts it, I would recommend making that change.
Okay. And then there's some typos in there that I would like to have fixed before it's actually done too.
So if you want to make the motion to amend the typos, you could give the typos to Brendan if they're not subject matter, and then also to,
They're not.
okay, then also to include the change from shall to need to should.
Okay. Do we have Mike on yet? No Mike.
No,
Well, it'd be nice if he voted on this. But
let me see if I can get him to call in. Give me just,
okay. Okay.
Yeah, mine went off momentarily and then right back on. So maybe that's something that happened with Mike's too.
So Brendan, while we're in dead space, you want me to tell you your typos?
Why not? Please do.
So instead of saying the city of Fortuna, there's a couple of spots that it says the Fortuna
Oh,
right in the beginning of the report. And then there's one that says overtime as one word, and it should be overtime as in 2 words. And that's all I can remember right off.
okay. Not like the sports game overtime.
Right, not that.
Yeah, we'll address those straight away.
He's back.
Did you get anything from Mike, Sienna?
Oh, no.
no, sorry.
I thought he came
I
up.
was trying to text him to see if he could just call back in on his phone.
Mhm.
He's trying to use his phone for his modem, so I'm not sure if he's going to be able to get back on or not.
Okay, so we'll just go ahead and move forward. We opened and closed public comment, so we're ready for a motion with the changes that were mentioned.
I'll go ahead and make I'll move to adopt resolution 2021-39. The changes as mentioned with regard to the stoplights as well as the typos for the City of Fortuna Local Road Safety Plan.
Second.
Sienna, we have a motion and a second.
Resolution 2021-39, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Fortuna adopting the local road safety plan. Councilmember Losi,
Yes.
Councilmember Stanfield,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent,
Yes.
Mayor Long.
Yes, and thank you, Kathy, for being here to walk us through this. I did read the whole thing and it was actually more interesting than I thought it was going to be. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we will move on to item C, supplemental budget request to use American Rescue Plan Act funds to provide a premium pay bonus for eligible essential public employees during the COVID-19 pandemic. Merit, is this you?
This is me, so I'll be providing the staff report. I don't know if we should give a minute or two for Mike Johnson to come back on, or see if Sienna has an update from Mike on connecting.
He's working on connecting back to the meeting.
So I'll start whenever you'd like, Mayor Long, or if you want to give it a minute.
Yeah, let's just take like a 2-minute little break here and see if Mike gets back on. Right? Okay, welcome back, Mike, even though I can't see you. So make sure that if you want to say something, you raise your hand. Sienna, how do you do that by phone? Do you know how, Mike?
No, not by phone.
With the keypad, it's *6.
To raise your
Unmute
hand?
yourself.
okay.
Oh, to raise your hand is *9. I'm sorry. *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute yourself and mute yourself.
Okay.
Or
Okay,
just
thank you.
missing you, okay? All right, back
Okay.
to Mary.
All right, if I could share my screen. Can you see that okay, everybody?
Yes.
So this item is a supplemental budget request to use American Rescue Plan Act funds to provide premium pay for eligible essential employees during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that is what staff's recommendation is, in the amount up to $120,000. And really, the intention was to provide our employees up to $2,000. So we chose the maximum amount that could come in under the premium pay, which was $13 an hour, and set a relatively low total amount, but I'll get more into that in just one moment. So a little bit of background: in March 2020, Humboldt County ordered the public to shelter in place with the exception of essential workers. And at the same time as that order came out, the city, myself, the city manager and city clerk, myself, and Sienna Evans, issued a memo declaring all full-time city employees as essential workers and requiring them to come to work, provide services for the public. So that include everybody across the board, from our wastewater treatment plant to police to parks employees, just all of our full-time employees, not part-time employees. And since then, Fortuna has been operating with all of our staff reporting on duty in person since that time. And there still are a number of other agencies within Humboldt County that have significant numbers of their employees working remotely and not reporting back to the office or to work. The American Reinvestment and Recovery Act was passed on March 11th, 2021, which provided $1.9 trillion to speed up the country's economic recovery from the impacts of COVID. 5 allowable uses were specified in the legislation, including support public health expenditures, address negative impacts caused by the public health emergency, replace lost public sector revenue, provide premium pay for essential workers, and to invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. And the total that the city is expected to receive is $2.93 million in 2 equal tranches, one this year. So half of it will come to the city this year and half fiscal year, and half of it will come to the city in the next fiscal year. So to date, the city has approved $2.32 million worth of projects. The primary use of these funds will be $2 million spent for the city's police facility replacement project, and $300,000 will go towards revenue recovery for police officer base pay. And then as of tonight, $20,000 was previously approved for the upgrade of the council chambers audiovisual equipment. And so those are the items that you see at the top. It actually increased from 20 to 45,000 for the council chambers audiovisual, and the box you see in the bottom of the red. This is what staff is proposing for the remaining ARPA funds, and really it's to include 120,000 for premium pay for essential workers with a limit of $2,000, and then the reservation of funds for future projects. At the last council meeting, we talked about various different American Reinvestment and Recovery Act fund projects that could come up there, and there really wasn't a clear decision. So for now, what staff is recommending that we reserve those funds for future projects. We don't have to identify what they're for now. So using this $120,000 for premium pay would leave $467,614 remaining for other projects as decided by the council in the future. So the request is, again, $120,000 for this, for the premium pay, $2,000 maximum per eligible employee, so up to a maximum of 153.84 hours. There's certain eligibility criteria that have to be met. There's a table included with the staff report that lists the eligibility criteria in which employees would be eligible. I already mentioned that there will be $467,000 remaining for other future projects, and there's a number of attachments with the staff report. In addition to the list of employees, there's a memo. The memos included that we prepared identifying our employees in March 2020 as essential workers, and then a National League of Cities fact sheet really that discusses the premium pay for city employees. And I just say it's very rare for funding to come along from the federal government. This is not general fund dollars. This is not dollars coming from City of Fortuna sales tax. This is federal dollars from the American Rescue Plan Act that has this as a specific allowable use. And so this is probably something that we may not ever see again, and really is just available as a result of the pandemic and the desires of the federal government to see this money put into the community. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll open public comment. If you are on our Zoom meeting, you can raise your hand. If you are not, you can call the number on your screen. Does anyone from the council have any comments or questions? Mike Losey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would really like to see that $467,000 that is remaining just left untouched until we find out as far as a contingency for the police department. Just in the event that that additional money would be needed for the remodel there. Just
Any other questions or comments? Tammy?
I have, yeah. I would like to support this. I think it is a good way to show our employees that we appreciate them staying here and working through this pandemic. And I think our city's most valuable asset is our employees. I'd like to do this for them.
Anyone else? Mike Johnson?
I
do you-
would, yeah, I agree with Tammy in that this is a good thing to do for the people that have stuck with things through Corona and everything else. And I also agree with Mike that we should hold money in reserve for contingency for the PD remodel project. I would just ask one question: if this is for currently employed employees, correct?
Yes.
There was a list with the staff report that showed everybody.
And I think I couldn't see his presentation, but I did,
I figured.
was able to go through the staff report. He did have a good staff report for it. So thank you for that.
All right, anyone else from the council? Anyone from the public? No hands on my end. Sienna, any phone calls? All right, hearing none, seeing none, we'll close public comment. And definitely our employees are the city's greatest asset. So anytime we can reward them for working hard and being available to the public is a good day. So with that, if there are no other comments or questions, we can entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve a supplemental budget request to use American Rescue Plan Act funds to provide a premium pay bonus for eligible essential public employees during the COVID-19 pandemic in the amount of $120,000.
Second.
Sienna, we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Councilmember Johnson,
Yes.
Councilmember Losi,
Bradley, yes.
Councilmember Stanfield,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Trent,
This one I'm actually happy to vote on.
Mayor Long.
Yes. All right, thank you. Our next item is a discussion to change monthly staff quarterly.
So we put this item on, I think at the request of the city clerk and some of the department heads. Sienna, I don't know if you have anything, but really it's a question of staff to council is how frequently would you like to see those monthly staff reports from our department and division heads? Is the council happy with how we're doing it now and having it monthly? Or do you think less frequency would still meet the needs of the council being updated what's happening? It doesn't seem like a lot, but every 2 weeks putting those together is quite a bit. But we'd be happy to do whatever the council wants, and just wanted to get the council's take on whether or not they'd like to continue to see those monthly, and if you like how they are, or if we could go to a longer period for doing those staff reports.
Well, I have a lot of opinions on this one. Anyone else want to say anything?
I'll start with one opinion on there, like especially the report or the disbursements. If we only did that once a quarter, that's going to be so much that we're going to have to go through on that paperwork. I think there's some of them, maybe some of them can be reduced, but I think if it's just quarterly, it might be a lot more that we're going to have to go through and read at that meeting.
I'm going along the same lines as Tammy. I think there's some we could switch to quarterly, but some I want to see every month. For instance, the finance, I don't want to not be updated on what our finances are except quarterly. And the same with the cash disbursements. And honestly, I just really like knowing what's going on in the city. And if we wait till quarterly, it's like a really long time. But I don't really care, Sienna, sorry, about the administrative department monthly report necessarily. 'Cause I don't
You know,
need-
I wanted to just add one thing. I think this partially was in response to some conversations I'd had with council members about kind of like the repetitive information. There seems to be some redundancy with some of the information in some of the staff reports. And that could be just from the template that was set up when that department originally started creating those monthly reports, or it could just be, you know, a habit of the author. I mean, it just depends on how long, you know, the individual's been responsible for the report. But I think that staff is supportive of whatever the council wants to see. We just want to make sure that we're not being redundant, that we're not providing, you know, information that council members not interested in seeing on a monthly basis. And then maybe if there's some areas to streamline or trim fat, that we can do that. That was really the intention of this.
So I agree, and I've seen some things that I think could just maybe be made into tables where we can just see the changes rather than the explanation of what every department does. And like I know the police department has the same paragraph at the top every time, but I don't know that till I've already skimmed through it and read it. So I get that that's out there for the public as well, but somehow making some kind of a table or something in the middle, if you want to keep that line on there, chief, because it is really good the way, you know, it talks about serving the community and all the things. But if there was a table or some kind of a chart or something that we could go straight to look at, to see what's been happening, I think it could be streamlined and it would be simpler, much easier reading. But quarterly, like for Parks and Rec, I think we miss things. There's, you know, always something going on from Parks and Rec. And the same with the police. You know, people are always asking us different things about what's happening within the police department. Public Works, I don't know unless it's something special. I mean, we could have a little chart quarterly that showed how many leaks we repaired and how many spills we had and all those things. I don't know that that one is really necessary, but so I think that you guys could probably think about it and go back to your department heads and kind of see if you can streamline some things. And maybe, I don't know, anybody else want to jump in here? Because I'm talking.
The other option we could have, quarterly, I think is a little bit long, but we could go every other month so that the reports go from 12 a year down to 6 a year as an option.
Anybody else?
I would say that first off, that I really like the photos that they put in the report this time. I mean, it added some flair to it and some to see what's going on, explain things. So that's great. And I think possibly, yeah, every other month. I understand that it would be a lot of disbursement reports to read through if we went to 3 months. So that's kind of long. But I'm like Sue, I like to know what's going on in town and what's happening. But I think every other month might work.
I have a couple of comments. The first is in regards to Councilmember Johnson's comment about the photos. We like the photos too. The photos tell a story, but they take up a lot of space. They make a file really large, so makes it harder to upload to the website, makes it harder to save to different devices. So just so you know, we would like to include more photos, but it does make for very large files. And I also, to speak to Mayor Long's, you know, concern about wanting to know what's going on in the parks and the police. I think we know that as well. So it was kind of a fine line of, could we make this more streamlined? Could we do it every other month? Maybe it's not going to be appropriate for every other or for every department, but we could discuss it, you know, at the division head level and see if we can maybe make those reports that could kind of go bi-monthly a little bit more streamlined for the sake of time, and more of an at a glance reference. And then those ones that you like to have a little bit more detail, have that. I'm hesitant to make it one way for some departments and one way for other departments. But I think we could probably talk about it at a staff level and come back with something that that could meet all of the needs.
And maybe if we went to every other month on the, say, parks, police, whatever, if there were some highlights, maybe it could just be like the highlights or something like that instead of a 6-page report with community service hours and, you know, all of the things. If there was something like the Hot Shots is starting up, okay, so maybe a little reminder that Hot Shots is starting up. So if you know people or you have grandkids or whatever, you want them not to miss the deadline, and just different things like that, where it's not 6 pages from the parks, maybe it's just, you know, some bullet points. And the same maybe with the police. I don't know, you guys can think about that.
Thanks. I think that's good feedback. And if we're going to change something, we'll bring it back to council and let you know.
All right, thanks. Okay, our next item is our city manager's report.
So I just have a few items. As is typical, I'll go through the upcoming meeting dates. Our next regular council meeting is on December 6th at 6:00 p.m. Our next planning commission meeting is scheduled for November 23rd, also at 6 p.m. Our next Measure E meeting, we did schedule a special meeting to make sure that we got feedback on the use of some of the Prop 68 funds, or excuse me, some of the Measure E funds for the Roner Community Recreation District, Recreation and Park District pool effort. So we have a special meeting scheduled on November 30th. So we did proceed with that. That'll be at 3:00 p.m. And their next regular meeting for Measure E will be on December 21st at 5:30 p.m. Then on Wednesday, our next Roner Community Recreation and Park District meeting will be on Wednesday, December 1st. So I just have a couple of updates. One, I've been working with our city attorney and Emily Hobelman, the president of FBID, and we expect to have a draft of a new contract to bring back to the council with some suggested changes to municipal code as well as updated bylaws. So those are all going to come back draft. I will probably review those with FBID and their board, and then bring the whole package to the city council to consider changes. So we're hoping to have that by December 6th, but certainly before the end of the year. So with that, there's a number of other things, but that's all I have to report for this evening.
So Jeremy might be going to cover this in his report, but did FBID interview for a new director?
They're scheduling for interviews right now for the 18th.
Okay. Anyone else having questions for Merritt? All right, seeing none, any future agenda items?
I have one. We've been talking a lot about economic development and trying to bring funds into the city and businesses and stuff. So I really think that we need to stop putting off the cannabis ordinance. I think that we need to go ahead with that. I think we should be able to have a public meeting at River Lodge. They've had a few in there. I think we can arrange to do that, but I think that we've put it off long enough and we need to go ahead and actually move forward with this.
Any other comments?
I don't know if you want other agenda items, but one of the things that I'm working on with our police chief and city attorney is modification to the city's municipal code to give the police department options to address unlawful camping within the city. So I'd like to bring back an ordinance change to look at more prohibitions for location, times, and other things to keep people from sleeping in front of our businesses and obstructing the public right of way. And also address unlawful loitering. So really just tightening things up. I don't know if the council would want to see a workshop ahead of time, or if it would be okay to draft an ordinance and bring it immediately for first reading.
I'm okay with an ordinance. What's everyone else thinking?
I'm good with an ordinance.
Okay.
So we'll bring that back on a future agenda.
Okay.
And thank you.
With regard to the cannabis, I really wouldn't even want to have a discussion about that until we know from staff whether any kind of a public meeting at River Lodge would be restricted numbers wise. If it is, then I don't think we should be having a meeting. I think any meeting that we have should be unrestricted as far as numbers. And I don't know that we, at this point, can have that kind of a meeting.
So just thoughts on that. I think it's important. We, be happy to set that up through teleconference. If you still want, if the council's opposed to that, then, we could try to get numbers, but happy to do whatever the council wants there, including take a stab at a draft ordinance and recommendations from staff too, if you want to. But again, that's when we've been ready to go on for quite some time.
Well,
Yeah,
we-
it's hard because I want to hear from Fortuna. I don't want to hear from Arcata and Eureka and all the people as far as our citizens go. And I don't know how you get some of our citizens on a Zoom meeting.
Just a question maybe leading up to this as a future agenda item. We could do a survey and put it out in water bills too, and that'll get to everybody who has water in the city and do a little bit of outreach. I'd be happy to bring a questionnaire to the council ahead of time, but that might be one way to get it started and get a large swath of people within the city that wouldn't normally come to a meeting.
And just see if we get any surveys returned.
Yeah, we have a draft. We put that together, but we wanted to have it in advance of a meeting, but maybe we could go ahead and just see what the public interest is and then gauge whether or not we follow up with a meeting.
Merritt, I have a question on that. We have a lot of multi-units in Fortuna and they don't get water bills. How would you get the information to them?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So it would just, it's an easy way for us to get a lot of people. If we felt like there's a large segment of the population that we're not getting, we could make an extra effort there. But again, if that would help the council decide whether or not you want to have this on a future, a workshop or another meeting, that could be something we do in advance and then move towards a future meeting, depending on the results.
I think the discussions that we've had in the past have pretty much centered around not moving forward until we're able to move with a in-public meeting. And I don't know what a survey is going to do. Certainly, your questions would have to be very specific, but I don't know. I think I don't know that things have changed that much since the last time we had this discussion.
Walt, did you have a comment?
I do. We live at Royal Crest, and there's 200 plus homes here. We do not get water bills, so we do not get those notices. And I haven't been able to figure out a solution to that. But I wonder if the manager here would be willing to put those in with our rent bills. I don't know. All I know is nobody at Royal Crest gets notices from the city of Fortuna. So we're just left out.
Okay, we will keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so City Council reports and comments. Mike Johnson.
Well, I have a HCOG meeting coming up, and on that agenda for the meeting this coming Thursday is some updates to the regional transportation plan and the regional transportation improvement plan. And those are the major items that we're looking at. My iPad went to sleep and the agenda for that went away, so I don't have it in front of me anymore, but I remembered that. Jeremy stood in for me at the last historical commission meeting last week because I was tied up and couldn't get to it. And I appreciate what he's done for that, so I will let him report on that. And that's pretty much until I have the HCOG meeting. That's what I have for now. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Mike Ossie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have not had any meetings for my regular committees since the last meeting, but I've got a LAFCO meeting scheduled for Wednesday, and I might be in jury duty on Wednesday, and I've already contacted or tried to contact my alternate who is hunting in Colorado and cannot be contacted. So I'm not sure I've let Colette know that I might not be there. Other than that, last Thursday, Jeremy, Mike Johnson, and I attended the fire department promotion and badge pinning ceremony at Fortuna, the main station at Fortuna Fire Department. So it was an excellent ceremony. Congratulations to the explorers, the firefighter promotions from firefighting trainee to full firefighter, and all the other promotions. There were quite a few promotions from lieutenant to captain, and so there's a good turnout too from the public. So congratulations to them all.
All right, Jeremy.
All right, I will start with that historical commission. That was a pretty neat meeting to sit in on. Not a lot to report out, but very interesting. I enjoyed being there. The historical commission said that they're still working on the book in and around the arena that commemorates the 100th anniversary of the Fortuna Rodeo, but it won't be ready by Christmas. So sorry, everybody, you got to come up with something else. But mid-March, they should have that book out. They accepted 3 donated items to the museum. The first one was a set of Presto logs, 6 in a bundle, still in the original twine from the Palco, Pacific Lumber Company. And a neat story there that at one point when the lumber mills were really suffering, Presto logs are what kept that company afloat at one point. So pretty neat little history lesson there. There was a 1904 copy of the semi-weekly newspaper, The Advance, that was donated by a resident in Reading. So that's in the museum now. And then a promissory note from 1897 was discovered and forwarded to the historical commission, and it was handwritten in Scotia, California. So from a lady out of Eureka, Mrs. Bradbury. So pretty fascinating stuff. Then Cameron donated 3 pairs of our old roller skates because those were historic. Let's see, regarding FBID, I have a great president that gave me some notes here. So Anderson, Lucas, Somerville, and Borges are making pretty decent progress on the audit. So there's more to come there. Board members are still trying to help the auditor round up a few various documents. President Hobelman appointed a hiring committee that includes myself, the city manager, her, and I believe one other board member, Ashley Mitchell. So after lengthy discussion, I know Councilman Losi had an interest in participating, but we thought we might keep the hiring committee to a smaller group and then report out our findings with A, B, and C. Let's see, downtown merchants are planning their holiday open house on Friday, December 10th. And in coordination with that, there's some FBID board members that have really stepped up, and they're taking the lead on the Al Gray Memorial Lighted Parade, which is on the same evening. They will start at Redwood Village and go through a predetermined route and end up on Main Street, where they will be lined up and able to be viewed by the public as in years past pre-COVID. Overall, the board's really looking forward to the hiring process and starting that job or talking to the job applicants. Then let's see. Happy to have momentum on events leading into the holiday season, and our next board meeting will be on December 9th. So that's it for FBID. Couple other notes. I attended today's chamber meeting And just wanted to highlight a couple things that were in their notes that kind of go along with the greater good of the economic development of our region. Actually, no, they're just for fun. River Life Foundation will be hosting Thanksgiving at the Veterans Hall on November 25th from 1 to 3. And I'd like to go ahead and say, if anybody has any information or wants to volunteer in any way, please call 707-362-9384. One other thing that FBID and the Chamber of Commerce is doing is I'm going to hit enter here and let you know about Shop Small Saturday. That's coming up on the 27th of November. It's a special program that merchants can be involved in. They can contact either Renee Lindsay at the Chamber or Laura Morris, one of our board members through FBID, to get more information about how to participate in Shop Small for the holidays on November the 27th. The other thing I wanted to mention was I Want to Be a Kid on November 22nd to the 24th, because the Parks and Rec Department will have drop-in kid camp that week. And it says they'll be providing many activities such as arts and crafts, cooking, games, hikes, and even roller skating. Hours are from 7:30 to 5:30. Fees are $25 a day. And the kid needs to bring their own lunch, snacks, drinks, and a jacket. But I'm really always grateful that we offer that to parents when kids are off for different holiday breaks and so forth. So please take advantage of that. It sounds like a lot of fun to me. And then lastly, I did want to say that I also want to congratulate the Fortuna Fire Department and their promotions within their department, because it's amazing how many hours that those people give up in support of our community. And Chief, you do get a free pass for not attending with us. It was his wife's birthday.
I thought it was valid.
Yeah, you made a good call, my friend. And I think that's all I have to report, unless somebody wants to hear about the River Lodge Craft Fair coming up this Saturday and Sunday. So enjoy all the festivities that are coming your way, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Thank you, Jeremy. Tammy?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I just have to say I am disappointed I couldn't go to the pinning, but I did have a previous family event that I had to go to. So I'm sorry that I missed that. And I was going to report about the craft fair at the River Lodge, but Jeremy did that for us, so that's okay. So I have nothing else to report.
All right, thank you, Tammy. I appreciate the 3 council members who were able to attend the badge pinning. My personal life and my work life and everything just got in the way of that, and I overcommitted. I had 3 different places to be that night. So thank you all for representing. Really appreciate it. I'm still on that committee working group through the League of California Cities, discussing housing and getting Sacramento to back off and allow cities and counties to have more local control. We've had a couple 2-hour meetings so far, and we have one more that's going to be 3 hours on the 17th. A new restaurant opened today. Did everybody hear about that? The new Mexican restaurant in the old sushi boat on Redwood Village Mall. They're having a ribbon cutting tomorrow at 11 if anyone else would like to attend, and their grand opening is going to be November 20th. So that is Saturday. So with that, we have closed session. We have, find my page here, 4 items, including conference with real property negotiator pursuant to section 54956.8 of the government code, vacant land along Eel River and 1320 Riverwalk Drive. Negotiating parties are city manager Merritt Perry for the city of Fortuna and Land MK as the negotiating parties. Under negotiation is the price and terms of payment. The second item is a public employee performance evaluation pursuant to section 54957 of the California Government Code, title City Manager. The third is public employee performance evaluation pursuant to section 54957 of the California Government Code, title of Finance Director. And the fourth item is conference with labor negotiators city negotiator, city manager Merritt Perry, employee organizations, the Fortuna Police Employees Association, Fortuna Employees Association, and the Unrepresented Management Group in accordance with section 54957.6 of the government code. Does anyone that is on our Zoom meeting have any comments or questions before we adjourn to closed session? Jeremy, you have your hand up.
It's not about that though, so I'll wait.
Okay. All right, seeing none, Jeremy, what's your hand up for?
Well, I forgot to mention that currently in the Depot Museum, they have a room that is dedicated to what life looked like in 1921, which is 100 years ago. And now they're going to convert it to what Christmas looks like in 1921. So it's worth a stop by there. I think it's really cool that they put that energy into that building and all those different displays. So I forgot to mention that in my report.
All right, thanks. So would someone like to make a motion to adjourn to closed session?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn to closed session.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
I.
All right, we'll wait a couple minutes here for Sienna to do her magic, and then we'll try to get through these next 4 items.